She wore white like a bride, but never married. Held a scepter in one hand and secrets in the other. For over 4 decades, Elizabeth I ruled not just a kingdom, but an image. The Virgin Queen, untouched, unchallenged. But behind the portraits and poetry was a woman walking a tightrope of power, perception, and personal sacrifice. Born in 1533, Elizabeth Tudor entered a world that didn't expect her to survive, let alone rule. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed when Elizabeth was just 2. Declared illegitimate. Shuffled out of court. She grew up surrounded by suspicion and shadows. She watched her father's wives come and go, most by axe. And she learned one thing early: in Tudor England, queens didn't last long unless they mastered silence. When her half-sister Mary died in 1558, Elizabeth inherited the throne of a fractured nation. England was politically unstable, religiously divided, and economically strained. But Elizabeth was no puppet. She understood the throne demanded more than ceremony, it demanded strategy. She presented herself not as a woman, but as an institution. She adopted the persona of the Virgin Queen deliberately, both to avoid marriage and to control her narrative. In a world where female rulers were seen as weak, she gave herself to England. And in doing so, she became untouchable. But it was a performance, every gesture, every word, calculated for effect. She wore elaborate gowns not for vanity, but authority. She painted her face white with lead to hide illness and age, turning her body into a symbol of national endurance. Even her famed red wig became a crown of fire, projecting youth long after it had faded. Yet behind the facade, Elizabeth was deeply human. She was fiercely intelligent, fluent in 6 languages, and kept a personal library of over 1,000 books. She wrote poetry. She danced. And she suffered, often alone. She surrounded herself with men, but never shared her power. Her closest companion, Robert Dudley, was the great scandal of her court. They shared a bond for decades, whispers of romance were constant. But she never made him king. She couldn't afford to. Marriage, in Elizabeth's world, was political suicide. To marry a foreign prince risked turning England into someone else's satellite. To marry an English noble meant choosing one faction and creating a dozen enemies. So she stayed single. And played suitor after suitor like chess pieces on a board. One of her greatest trials came in 1588, when Spain sent its mighty armada. Philip II wanted to crush the Protestant queen and reclaim England for Catholicism. Elizabeth stood before her troops at Tilbury, dressed in silver armor, declaring, "I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king." The speech electrified her people. And though storms and seamanship won the battle, Elizabeth won the myth. But power came at a cost. She had no heir. She died alone at Richmond Palace in 1603, after 44 years on the throne. Her death marked the end of the Tudor dynasty. Yet her legacy endures. She presided over a golden age of English literature: Shakespeare, Marlowe, Spenser. She expanded trade, commissioned voyages that would one day create an empire, and held her country together when it could have broken apart. And while she is often remembered as the Virgin Queen, that title hides more than it reveals. She was never simply the chaste ruler in white. She was a master of statecraft. A woman who transformed weakness into strength, vulnerability into strategy. Elizabeth didn't just wear a crown. She became one.